Hello, Fusion. My name is Alex Fuse, the host of Fusion News, and we have another big show for you right now. I am on the phone with former general manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers, the one and only Fred Claire. Fred, big news out of New York today that the Yankees got James Paxton from the Mariners. So, my first question for you is, what is this time of year like for a general manager in baseball?
Well, it's a very exciting time for teams, and particularly teams like the Yankees, who have the wherewithal to make a trade to hopefully impact their upcoming season. And the biggest misnomer in baseball is the term off season. There is no off season. There has never been an off season because every day is significant. And when you can add a player to your club, and obviously a lot of consideration, because in most cases, as a contender, you're giving up a young prospect. But it's exciting from the standpoint, and from the standpoint of both teams. The ideal trade is the one that helps both teams.
Mhm. When you went into the offseason, like you said, there really is no offseason in baseball. Did you have any different, way to go about the offseason? Like, what was your main goal each offseason with the Dodgers?
Well, it was rather basic to the standpoint, and similar, I think, with every team. Certainly, at any team that hopes to contend. What are our needs? What happened? What is it we saw on our team, knew about our team last season that simply isn't acceptable for us going into the upcoming season if we're going to be competitive and if we're going to win? And I would give the example of that, and this goes back decades, but after our 1987 season with the Dodgers, when we were 16 games under 500, it was clear to me and clear to all of us that there were three needs that we absolutely had to fill. We needed an everyday shortstop, we needed a closer, and we needed a left-handed relief pitcher. So when we came into the winter meetings, and more importantly, came out of the winter meetings, we had acquired Alfredo Griffin as our shortstop, Jay Howe as our closer, and Jesse Orosco as a left-handed relief pitcher. So you never know. That trade worked out very well for us. It worked out very well for Oakland because I traded Bobby Welch. But it's a matter of trying to take all of the input, taking the input of your manager and the coaching staff and your scouts, and then trying to establish what do we need to do to improve, and where are our best opportunities? Because it takes a lot of time, a lot of study, and your upcoming season is going to depend upon what you do.
How much pressure did you feel from the higher ups in the organization going into the offseason, knowing, okay, well, we need to win this season? So how much pressure do you feel by the higher ups within the organization?
Well, good question, Alex, but it varies from organization to organization. And I was very fortunate. I was extremely fortunate to be with the Dodgers under the O'Malley ownership. And the amount of pressure truly was zero. And that may sound strange, but the Walter and Peter O'Malley realized that with any organization, you win with a collective effort and you fall short with a collective effort. So no one person, not the general manager, not the manager, not the guy who you hope is going to be the MVP, is going to determine the outcome. It's going to be a combination. So I was very fortunate because the O'Malleys had a philosophy of giving responsibility to people at all levels and then holding them responsible. So I can't judge it. I have the feeling certainly that that's not true with every organization. But I never had the feeling of we have to do this, we have to do that. Freedom was given to me with the expectation that we would succeed.
Mhm. When you look at your successes with the Dodgers, what was one moment that stuck out for you most when you look back at your time as a general manager with the Dodgers?
Alex, I don't know in terms of one moment. There are too many paths, too many seasons, too many twists and turns. excuse me, to say that there was a moment. I really never sensed that. I think what it is a process. And it's a process of day after day after day trying to be the best that you can be as an organization, as an individual. And that's really the intriguing part of the business, of any business. And that's what's pointed out in Jim Collins' great book, Good to Great, one of the top management books, because he terms it the flywheel concept. You simply, every day, you put forth your best effort. Every day, that flywheel turns a little bit more. And there's no one moment in time where you say, wow, we've got it. This is it. It's the process.
Mm-hmm. Fred, if you could go back in time, would you change any move differently, knowing the possible future of a player's career?
That's an easy one, Alex. And I hate to say it, it's obvious. And the reason that I don't like to say it is I don't like to point out a trade where it turned out so bad for us because we acquired a player or players in a trade. But clearly, the trading of Pedro Martinez was a terrible trade. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. And really, it's, we wanted to fill a position second base. And the reason I don't like to say that is I think the world of Lino DeShields, and he's an outstanding man. And I believe he's now managing. I hope he gets to be a major league manager. So it wasn't so much that we didn't acquire a good player in Delino, a very good player. Mm-hmm. But Pedro was a player who never should have left us.
Mm-hmm. If you could be a general manager for one day, what team would you choose and why?
Oh, for any team, I would I would choose any team on any day. I absolutely love the job, and I will say this: in knowing every organization, and whether it's the Giants or whether it's the Angels or whether it's the Yankees or Houston or Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, I don't care where you go. I know enough about those organizations and the histories of those organizations and the people involved that everyone, to me, is a treasure. And when you have the opportunity and you have the responsibility to be a general manager, and again, it can be any place. And I had dear friends as general managers in each of the cities throughout the years. But it's truly a privilege, Alex. It's a tremendous responsibility, but it's a tremendous privilege to have that opportunity.
When you were the general manager of the Dodgers, were you ever afraid of another opposing team, wondering, okay, what team is this going to do? You could look at it now to where the Yankees and the Red Sox have been in the last 15 years. Okay, it's almost like a competition. We're going to get this pitcher. We're going to get this hitter. Were you ever afraid of a team when you were the GM?
Absolutely not. I never evaluated a team or a trade in terms of where the player was going. And along those lines, I can remember a conversation that I had with one of our players, Franklin Stubbs, a first baseman, who wasn't getting to play much. And there was a rumor, and there was merit to the rumor, that Houston was interested in Franklin. And I remember I met with Franklin. He's a wonderful guy, and he's in baseball today. And he said, Fred, Mr. Clare said, you're afraid to trade me to Houston at that time in our division. I said, and it kind of stunned me. And I said, no, Franklin, I said, no, I understand your frustration. I think you're a player deserving of an opportunity to play, but I would never consider being afraid to deal to any club. Because if the trade works, you're going to be better by the trade. You're going to have to compete with all the clubs in any case, and that's the joy and the competition of the game. But no, I never thought about it. But do clubs, I suppose, or the question, do they keep an eye on one another? Well, they do, because you're always trying to get better, but you have to be driven by your own goals.
What does the 1988 World Series mean to you?
Well, it means a great deal, and there was quite a celebration this year, of course, with the 30th anniversary, and there was a reunion at Dodger Stadium, and to go back and to see the players and the luncheon ceremony that we had. What really struck me is the spirit of those players, of that team, at that luncheon on a Saturday, and I would imagine it was probably June. You would have thought they would have been together and played a game the night before. It was that close. So it was very unique, and I would hope other teams, championship teams, get a chance to enjoy those experiences 30 years later. But it was a team with, and the players themselves, and they've spoken to this, they recognized throughout the season that something special was happening, that there was something here that seemed to have a magical tone to it. And I suppose that happens, and I know it does in a lot of winning seasons, but it clearly did in 1988.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to ask you a similar question. What does Vin Scully mean to you?
Vin Scully, Vinny means the world to me, because he has meant so much to the Dodgers. He is, and I've termed it many times, that Vinny is the most valuable Dodger of all time when you consider overall contribution. But the other thing about Vinny is, as good as he has been as an announcer in his career, and he's been at the very top of the mountain, he's even better as a person. Mm-hmm. So when you have the just the pure joy of being a friend of Vinny's, and I think that's what really is so special about him. So many people, regardless of their position, fans, feel the closeness, because that's the spirit mm-hmm. that he conveys.
Yeah, I definitely agree. You know, growing up, just listening to Vin Scully, he's one of the greatest announcers of all time. And we'll switch gears now. Before we wrap up this interview, one of my favorite segments on the show is a Fast Five question. It's just a 5 rapid fire questions. So the first question for you is favorite city to enjoy a baseball game in besides Los Angeles?
Great question, Chicago, Wrigley Field.
Okay. Do you like to eat one of the Chicago dogs when you're watching the game?
I have done that, of course.
What's your go-to snack for a late night when you were the general manager?
Anything that was readily available, because by the time that we got to a place to have a snack, whatever it was fine, and usually accompanied by a cold beer.
If you were sitting by yourself at a table, who would you like to join you from the past Dodgers history, either player, coach, or even announcer?
Without question, I would have more than one. But if I had to choose one, it would be Jackie Robinson.
Mm-hmm. Favorite player to ever watch play the game of baseball?
My favorite player, because it was my initiation to baseball when I was just a kid growing up in a small town in Ohio, would have had to have been Hank Sauer. Name most people probably don't know, but he was a big home run hitter for the Reds and then, of course, for the Cubs.
If you ever played a Major League Baseball game, what position would you play?
Shortstop, no question.
And Fred, the last question for the interview: if a 15-year-old kid came up to you and said that baseball was boring and they don't get it and they'll never watch the game, what would you tell him?
Come to a game with me. Let me introduce you, because I don't think that you fully understand all that's taking place. So let's you and I, young man, let's you and I go sit in a ballpark, and let's see if we can't show you what this is all about. Because when you know it and when you understand it, and everybody isn't going to love any one business, but I would like to try to introduce that person to the pure joy of the game.
I couldn't have said any better. Once again, the former general manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers, Fred Claire, thank you again for joining me. And where can the Feuzon follow you on Twitter and listen to your podcast and follow along with you just throughout every single day?
Well, we started a podcast, Alex, and something I know you relate to, and it's termed, the podcast is Life in the Front Office. And our one goal is to help young people with an interest in a career in sports. I'm working with Andy Dolich and Pat Gallagher, both wonderful, experienced major league executives for decades. A young man by the name of Jake Hirschman. I term him our quarterback. But each week we have a guest. And this week, in fact, we had Rick White, a friend who's the president of the Independent League. And we're trying to help young people. We enjoyed long careers. We're trying to help others. We're trying to help the young people see that there are careers. If they're passionate about sports, they want to work in sports, there's a way to fulfill that dream. So beyond that, and one will see that mentioned on my Facebook account or on Twitter or on LinkedIn. So I've always tried to assist young people, and I'm happy to have that involvement.
Definitely. Once again, thank you so much for joining me today, and I can't wait to listen to the podcast.
Great, Alex. Good to be with you, and continue your good path and good work, and wishing you the greatest success.
Thank you so much. It means a lot. Thanks again. All right, Feuzon, you heard it from the one and only Mr. Fred Claire, the former general manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Thank you again for listening, Feuzon. I'll be joining you tomorrow with a very special interview. I have Meredith Gorman, who is a Patriot reporter from the New England Patriots, joining me in studio live from Dean College tomorrow to wrap up and before we head to the Thanksgiving break. Once again, Feuzon, stay tuned for that. Make sure to follow me on Twitter @AlexFeuz, and I will be seeing you very soon. Thanks for listening.